as Col says, the GPs are super receptive locally to a conversation. That's quite a straightforward one. An immediate to-do, which you'll have probably taken care of already, is letting anybody that you would ordinarily work with know what you're now certified in. Because even if any of those guys haven't been directly impacted, a lot of the grads are receiving referrals, if you like, from their existing clients who've got friends or family members that are struggling and didn't know where to turn. So there's that piece. And then even simply from a social media and a LinkedIn perspective, as you have done already actually, but letting people know that are around you that may not be working with you in any way, shape or form, know that you're local in their community as a bit of an expert. But as well as all those kind of obvious things, and I can't remember if you and I talked about this when we chatted, we found that employers are concerned for their employees who, especially if they've had long COVID, they've been out on sick long term since, in some instances, March, can't read emails, severe brain fog, can't function in meetings, can't commute to work, fearful of losing their jobs. Employers are having to lay out on sick pay or support, etc. So whereas corporate outreach we've done forever in our sector, this is like an entirely different type of conversation. It's got entirely different meaning behind it. So that's worth proactively doing. And we're also having those conversations with other big corporate companies about regional offices. So as well as you guys doing it in local areas, we're trying to do it from the other side on behalf of all grads. And then schools, universities, colleges, where there's a swarm, that's an awful word, but a swarm of COVID cases amongst students and those large populated areas, they're reaching out to us and asking how they could work with a rebuild coach because they want to provide help and support for their students. So it's essentially absolutely any part of our community we ought to feel comfortable now to be able to dive in and have those chats. But a little bit like where Col and I are talking with the employers who've got national frameworks of offices and stuff, we're also having that conversation with NHS and National Social Prescription funding to see how we can give the GPs advanced awareness of what it is that you guys have been certified in and what you're capable of, so that when you do start to introduce some of those conversations, it isn't the first time that they're hearing that information and it's carrying an NHS acknowledgement. And also because those guys handle a pot of money that helps people in local communities who don't have the financial means to access help and support themselves personally. So we're very aware that there'll be individuals who would normally work with a coach or who are financially able to. And as Col said, providing that scaled option of small groups or online bigger groups, because that community element, just as a super quick sidebar, that community element is massive, because so many of these people that are out there struggling feel like they're struggling in isolation. And we hear very often, I thought it was just me. So even just providing big group online Zoom calls with people across your community that's been affected as a minimum provides people comfort. So we're chasing that at like a bigger endorsement from the NHS and those bigger funding pots, really. So they're two key priorities of ours. And then just to circle back with kind of what we're all about, really, like the coach and the club, all the club conversations that we're having come back to exactly what you guys all said at some point in this call, that our sector is best positioned to step in and help all of these people. We've got the NHS rehab centres coming, but they're not going to be in every single location. There's going to be waiting lists. There'll be accessibility issues inherent with a service like that. And also, as we talked about it this afternoon, Col, there's individuals who already are gym members or who work with a coach, that if they want to get help, they prefer to work with individuals they already have a relationship with versus necessarily having to go into a medical setting, which, as Col just said before, is already in a compromised situation. So if an individual's out of an acute phase, if we can welcome them all in and be a huge part of the extension of that service, not only are we then providing relief to the NHS, but we're also, as Col opened up with, we've talked so much about COVID as a problem, long COVID as a problem, but not enough. We haven't had enough airtime yet as a sector about the role that we play in this rehab piece, because we can play a significant role in it. We can rehabilitate people, and that's part of a big piece of the argument that we're all having, and conversations we're having with UK Active about why we're freaking essential as a service to support everybody. And then I guess the last piece on that is the more coaches that we speak to, and a lot of the clubs that we're already working with and that are joining the initiative to help, whilst we're knocking on government doors of every level and funding doors as much as we can to widen the awareness and gain better acknowledgement, partly because as well, we can only help as many people as we're all able to communicate with. But if we have the additional support quickly from these bigger groups, we can let more individuals in the population know that help's to come. So I'm expecting that within the next few weeks, a lot of those big voices, you guys as, you know, representatives of coaches across the country, and these global club chains that we're speaking with our combined voice, a little bit like together we worked so hard recently to overturn a lot of the restrictions, that we can present ourselves as the most viable and accredited rehabilitation option for everybody. I just got really evangelical, but I hope that made sense.
I think the thing to stress as well, though, on that point of these big rehab centres is they are primarily for people who've been hospitalised, so who've been on respiratory
Yeah, good point.
Who've had, heart failure, strokes that have been brought on by COVID-19, because it's a tiny pot of money in reality that they're investing in this, and it is going to primarily serve those people. And an important thing to have in your armory, Ben, Chris, Dave, when you're speaking to a GP surgery, is that what they despise, what they hate, are people who've presented with a problem, taken up GP surgery time, had whatever direction they've been given or medication go, and come back for the same reason, and or a deterioration of the same reason. Okay, so that negatively impacts on their stats, but also consumes the one thing they have less of, which is time. So when you speak to them and you say, look, because of post-viral fatigue, because of the levels of physical deconditioning that are left in the wake of COVID-19, these people are likely to come back because the situation will have deteriorated over something that actually could be repaired and restored by us. So this is going to be someone coming back to you because it's not prescribable via pill. They're going to report, they're going to say that they feel fatigued, bum, 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 and they will keep coming back because all you can do in that instance is address symptoms. Whereas half the money spent on supporting us in working with that individual and improving, overcoming that physical deconditioning and that post-viral fatigue means they're gone. They've seen you once, they've come to us, and now they're no longer your concern. And every week that goes by that they're not returning to your surgery, they're no longer a patient. They are now just a participant who's figuring out and making better health choices and moving their health status forwards. So that's what it's just important to know they hate that. Re-referrals, hate it.
And also, if it's useful to know, we've got coming down the pipe like a really simple one pager, which came off of the request of a few grad coaches who'd been having those initial conversations with GPs who were indeed receptive, but just what they were then needing to do was bring us into some of the conversations to answer and respond to some of the questions that the GPs had. So the purpose of this little one-pager tool is to have those handy so that you can share that doc with those guys and then hopefully be able to receive people far quicker. So that's happening as well. And if there's anything like that that you're going through these conversations, whether that's schools, employers, GPs, whatever, if there's any tools like that that you think are going to support or aid you, then obviously let us know. And then similarly, Dave and Tomo, we're doing some bits for Robbo for the gym, which will be marketing oriented and local community messaging oriented. So that will help to drive awareness that you guys are available at Hoylake as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, brilliant.
Thanks.
No,
Anything else from anyone else?
No, I think you covered everything I was going to ask there in that last bit. Just wanted to clarify just slightly. You know, just going back to group sessions, are you talking more about like a chat, or are you on about physical training?
Which one? Which version?
I don't know. Before, I think someone said about online training, and it was mentioned like group sessions could be a part. But what I've found is working with cancer patients. I know I'm going back to that again, but as I said, they link hand in hand. You're going to have people who are going to have different levels of fatigue, different comorbidities. For me, I think they need to be assessed and trained on a one-to-one basis. Now, I know that's not always possible, but what's your thoughts on that? Because I just heard a big group session before, and I was like, oh.
Well, it'd be small groups, so it'd be 2 or 3 that defines a small group. But I think you're right. I think to begin with, you've got to get on individual terms and understand where the individual's at before you can start to move them into a small group environment. You've really got to know where they're at individually so that you can manage them as part of a small group setup, 100%. So that's absolutely right. But it could be that in the first instance, whilst you are starting to set the wheels in motion with regards to them being contemplative, maybe over some of the lifestyle choices, where you're doing sessions that are based on how they can identify and target opportunities to increase general activities of daily life and physical activity, and even start to get your kind of nutrition messaging across. That's really safe and contained to do in these means, virtual means, and certainly as a small group. But yeah, when it comes to the exercise and how you would manage the exercise intensity, you need to know the person before you put them in a group situation. But again, it's just about the process. Would I do that if I was seeing them in the gym? So if I'd done those initial assessments and thought, right, I know where everyone's at, and I'm going to manage 3 people at the same time, small group in the gym, I'd be happy to press go on that. I wouldn't be happy to do it remotely. Because whilst I'm there with them, I can pick up on every kind of nuance of what they're doing and be there from a fail-safe point of view. But ideally, you're going to want to invest some reasonable one-to-one time with that person before you can say, right, now you're ready to be able to go into a small group environment, and we can continue down that road. Ultimately, as to all 3 of you, as coaches, you know, you're going to use that insight and expertise you have regards the individual to make the best choices for them as to what environment is best fit for them and is safest for them. And if at no point you're comfortable and you can say, no, this is okay, then 100% don't do it. Trust your gut instinct. If you think, I'm just not sure, then that answers it. Close the door. That's not the way to do it. I just think from an economies of scale point of view as well, and giving people access to a level of service so that they can afford it, it's really good to look at how you can make or take advantage of a small group situation, whether it is more discussive, topic-led, getting your nutrition message across, getting your physical activity messages across and that kind of stuff. Great, because people need that. I'd argue, we haven't got time for it now, but I'd comfortably argue that if 80% of our time as coaches was spent being able to meaningfully engage people on understanding the choices they need to make, and 20% facilitating what they do, we'd have way better outcomes. We'd change health. We'd change health and fitness across the board, but we don't. We do it the other way. 80% of what we do is there leading it, guiding it, managing it. 20% is getting our message across. And if we could, this might be, again, going back to what we were discussing earlier, maybe there's an opportunity in this where we flip that and we spend more time on that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're spot on there, because it's like people come to you. I was talking S&C now, or PT. They come to you, and the one thing they say, and you give them a program. Now they could do that themselves, but they go, "Yeah, but without you, I wouldn't be bothered doing it." So it's it's the flip side of things, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. That is the difference. I could go on about it all day. Literally,
Yeah,
that's the kind of, I mean, that is the difference, isn't it? That is the difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Why doesn't just, I mean, we live in the age of information. There's no barrier to it. Why doesn't that make a difference? Because it needs to be wrapped up in how the person builds that relationship and that trust and gets it across. That's where, if we can instill understanding in the processes and principles in people, far better outcomes. Far better outcomes.